challenge forms and conventions of real media products. So I'm going to go through how I think my magazine develops much more than it challenges forms and conventions of magazines of its type. I'm going to do this by analysing my front cover. As you can see here, these are the final products. I believe that on the whole, just from any objective point of view, on first glance, I'm really happy with the final result, and I do believe that there's a lot of resemblances to real music and hip hop magazines specifically of this kind, Double XL, Vibe, to name a few. I think that a lot of the conventions in those magazines are visible here, and I'm just gonna talk about them in detail. Before even going into specifically the front cover, double page spread, and the contents page, primarily even for example, similar that it develops conventions even through the frequency of its publication. Likewise to Double XL, my magazine and Double XL are both produced every 2 months, and its pricing as a consequence of this is quite fitting to the audience. I decided the culprit would be released every 2 months, and therefore I priced it at about £3.25. Double XL is priced at $5.99, which is £3.55 in England, and for the groups that I talk about later that I'm trying to attract my target audience, I think this is a very appropriate price. Okay, so here's the front cover. Here's double XL, an example of a double XL front cover, and here is the culprit cover. The large masthead is typical of hip hop publications, such as Double XL, Vibe, and The Source, for example. So, like the real music magazine that we see on the right from Double XL, a really professional-looking effect that I discovered through loads of research and that was possible to do in Photoshop was to actually make the model, the subject of the image, appear in front of the logo or the text. In my case, the culprit sign, and I think it adds a much more professional look to it. If you compare this to my music magazine, which I'll show you later on in this evaluation, you can actually see that the text in that is in front of the subject of my magazine. And so learning this technique, I think, greatly improved the final product in my cover. So talking about the cover lines now, they're of less importance for the regular colour scheme, and similarly to the real music magazine product on the right, Double XL, each colour line is of alternate colouring to create a more eye-catching effect. So unlike some magazines, I mean specifically for like music and my genre of music, which is hip hop, to appeal to my target audience, I really wanted to make a product that was relatively minimalistic. So I didn't really want to include like too many different colours. I believe if I was to do so, it gives a more childish effect. For example, like these, wide range of colours is normally evident in more publications and magazines aimed at younger children, whereas I'm aiming at 16 to 24-year-old age range. So a professional look is really necessary. In order to do so, I needed to make sure the colour schemes were nice and that there wasn't too much of a range of different colours. When we see the smaller cover lines that's outlining the other artists that are featured in the magazine, the colours are alternating, and I think there's a nice effect that is more eye-catching but equally professional. I think what we can see in general here, we can make a relative similarity of the two images on the Double XL on the right and mine on the left, is that both mastheads the text is bold and urban looking, and the font selections. I think that both font selections on mine and the Double XL publishers are suggestive of a magazine incorporating a lot of urban and street content, and I think that this appeals to the youth and young adult culture. So with the double page spread, so we see a drop cap is evident in the right image of Double XL magazine, and it's very typical of a modern music magazine can see it on my magazine as well. The arrows pointing to the drop cap. I did this in InDesign, and I think it really it added a much more professional effect to it. There's also a consistent use of similar colors. So it's in general, it's like I've got the gold title, um, just to kind of stand out a bit, but it's still relatively minimalistic, and that's I stayed true to that in this sense. The text is white. Some like the questions they stand out. You'll see later when you get a better, clear image of the photo of my double page spread. But the questions differ from the answers in this interview in that they stand out more, look slightly brighter and bolder, and this is more eye catching to the reader. But in general, there's not too much of a juxtaposition between the image taken and the text, the article text and the introductory text, because this is actually this was a purposeful effect by me because I wanted it to kind of complement the picture, the dark kind of look of the picture, and create that kind of rough effect for the audience and the consumer. So both of these main articles are on the reader's right side. This is the iFlow. Our iFlow we always read from the right first, so it's the first thing we're going to see. And just in addition to that, I think the picture is really powerful. So in order to make the text on the right, I wanted the reader to see that first because I think either way they're gonna see the photo. And just in general, I just think it's a really nice effect. If you look at the Birdman double XL double page spread, for example, that's below mine, it's just one of many examples where the picture's on the left side and the writing's on the right side. And although in some magazines like Kerrang and NME and other genres, you may see text kind of more all over the place and a lot more is going on, but I really wanted to stick to this minimalistic effect in my double page spread. So this is the contents page. This is my final product, and upcoming here is is an example of Vibe magazine. I would say that the contents page out of the contents double page spread and the front cover probably challenges conventions of a real music magazine of its type the most out of the three. Although I don't think it really does fully at all. I would say that the most obvious example of this is that in most hip hop publications like Double XL and Vibe, the contents page consists of one outstanding image, whereas mine is more similar to those of Q magazine, where several images are evident to promote the articles featured in the magazine. You see that here? And just in general, I mean, I do really like the effect of one image, but I think what I wanted to present is that I could use a wider range of images to create a really classy magazine cover. And I'm happy with the final product. I think it's quite similar to those of Q magazine, and although that's not distinctly a hip hop magazine, it is still a real music magazine that is extremely successful. And my my magazine really is really similar to the conventions that are seen in Q magazine. So the features column is, I think, very, very conventional. Even with this example, and I said they're quite dissimilar, you can still see it's placed on the left hand side in it for this instance. And that's not always the case in every publication. For example, in Q, I know for a fact when I did my research into Q that they varied the positioning of the featured articles based on the general design of that issue. But it's clear in both of these images, and even being a dissimilar cover, the Vibe magazine still shows loads of similarities. For example, like the titles of each feature are in a much bolder text to stand out, and they're much more eye-catching. Just in general, I think that the features column, and if you look at a Q features column, mine is really conventional and develops under the same conventions in this sense. I also wanted to include an editorial column, and I was really happy with the end design of this. Even though it was much more difficult to add columns in Photoshop because I wasn't using InDesign for this particular one, and it's a lot harder to separate columns in this. I still was happy with my overall effect, and I think it looks really, really professional. It's very conventional. Question 2. How does your media product represent particular social groups? So, it's representative mostly of those from the 16 to 24-year-old age group. These are the biggest consumers of hip-hop music. Corporates aim towards the youth, who are often very, very active on social media like Facebook and Twitter. Because of this, I incorporated links to these sites as a key feature. It represents mostly those of a C1 and C2 NRS social classification, and I talk about that here. The most similar real publication, XXL, says that I found a quote from the website that says XXL speaks to the rap music generation. The readers are the purveyors of hip-hop culture and consume music, fashion and lifestyle on a level that defies logic. They're in the clubs, online, on stage and at retail shops. Anywhere they can gain access to or create the music. They're the producers, the artists and the DJs. And this really underlines the how XXL are aiming to like aiming to appeal to a generation that really want to get involved in the type of things they're going to be reading, and my magazine is really, really similar to that. That's why it includes loads of features that younger people would really want to buy. The magazine's more minimalistic design is aimed to appeal towards those of a more middle-class background. I think that hip-hop as a genre has developed from a stage where it was distinctly underground to a state of almost mainstream categorization in 2014, with crossover artists like Drake and Macklemore topping both hip-hop and pop charts. Consequently, corporate attempts to appeal to the mainstream to some extent without completely abandoning the interests of passionate hip-hop enthusiasts of the 16 to 24 age range. Traditionally, hip-hop is young black culture, and although it's constantly evolving, corporate does incorporate a lot of content such as the urban clothing worn by some of the models that suggestive of this. Seen here. As mentioned before, it's representative of many aspiring young people who may be looking for a career in the articles of their interest. Another way is through clothing. You see here the snapback worn by the model in the front cover is representative of those from the 16 to 24 age range.